Welcome back to Wings of Bibles. I'm Dustin, and today we'll be covering part 43, Maintenance, Preventative Maintenance, Rebuilding, and Alteration. Now, I've already covered this subject in part 91, but the primary difference between part 91 Maintenance and part 43 is 91 is primarily for the operation of the aircraft in regards to maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations. And you can find this, and here we go. No person may operate any aircraft that has undergone maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, or alteration, unless these things have been done. So that's the primary difference and why I'm doing a separate video on part 43. So we'll jump straight into this. 43.1 Applicability. So they're going to describe what scenarios does this FAR apply to. Except as provided in paragraphs B and D of this section, this part prescribes rules governing the maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding, and alteration of any aircraft having a U.S. airworthiness certificate, foreign registered civil aircraft used in common carriage or carriage of mail under the provisions of Part 121 or 135 of this chapter, and airframe, aircraft engines, propellers, appliances, and component parts of such aircraft. This part does not apply to any aircraft for which the FAA has issued an experimental certificate unless the FAA has previously issued a different kind of airworthiness certificate for that aircraft. Any aircraft for which the FAA has issued an experimental certificate under the provisions of 21.191 I3 of this chapter, and the aircraft was previously issued a special airworthiness certificate in the light sport category under the provisions of 21.190 of this chapter, or any aircraft that is operated under Part 107 of this chapter, except as described in 107.140D. This part applies to all life-limited parts that are removed from a type certificated product, segregated, or controlled as provided in 4110. This part applies to any aircraft issued a special airworthiness certificate in the light sport category, except the repair or alteration form specified in 43.5B and 43.9D is not required to be completed for products not produced under an FAA approval. Major repairs and major alterations for products not produced under an FAA approval are not required to be recorded in accordance with Appendix B of this part. The listing of major alterations and major repairs specified in paragraphs A and B of Appendix A of this part is not applicable to products not produced under an FAA approval. Additional applicability of maintenance provisions for powered lift is set forth in Part 194 of this chapter. Now you'll see as we read through these following FARs that this whole part is rules applying to maintenance as compared to Part 91 where it's the operation of an aircraft in regards to maintenance. So Part 91, for example, what do you need to do if your aircraft hasn't had maintenance done, hasn't had required maintenance done, and you need to fly it? This part is talking about the specifics for the maintenance, the rules for the maintenance. So we'll continue here. 43.2 Records of overhaul and rebuilding. No person may describe in any required maintenance entry or form an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part as being overhauled unless, using methods, techniques, and practices acceptable to the administrator, it has been disassembled, cleaned, inspected, repaired as necessary, and reassembled, and it has been tested in accordance with approved standards and technical data, or in accordance with current standards and technical data acceptable to the administrator, which have been developed and documented by the holder of the type certificate, supplemental type certificate, or a material, part, process, or appliance approval under Part 21 of this chapter. No person may describe in any required maintenance entry or form an aircraft, airframe, aircraft, engine, propeller, appliance, or component part as being rebuilt unless it has been disassembled, cleaned, inspected, repaired as necessary, reassembled, and tested to the same tolerances and limits as a new item using either new parts or used parts that either conform to new part tolerances and limits or to approved oversized or undersized dimensions. And this is the perfect example. These are the rules regarding maintenance, not the operation of an aircraft. I just want to emphasize that. Part 43.3, persons authorized to perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, and alterations. So now we're getting into who can perform preventative maintenance and rebuilding and alterations. Except as provided in this section and 43.17, no person may maintain, rebuild, alter, or perform preventive maintenance on an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part to which this part applies. Those items, the performance of which is a major alteration, a major repair, or preventive maintenance, are listed in Appendix A. So they're saying the items, those items, which are the following, the performance of which is a major alteration, and those things are listed in Appendix A. So they give definitions in Appendix A of those items. The holder of a mechanic certificate may perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations as provided in Part 65. So a mechanic can perform maintenance on an aircraft. The holder of a repairman certificate may perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations as provided. So a repairman can as well. A person working under the supervision of a holder of a mechanic or repairman certificate may perform the maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations that his supervisor is authorized to perform. If the supervisor personally observes the work being done to the extent necessary to ensure that it is being done properly, and if the supervisor is readily available in person for consultation. However, this paragraph does not authorize the performance of any inspection required by Part 91 or Part 125 of this chapter, or any inspection performed after a major repair or alteration. So this part is saying a person who doesn't hold a mechanic certificate or a repairman certificate can perform the maintenance as long as they're being supervised by someone who does hold those certificates. And the reason being is you're never going to get your certificate if you don't have some type of experience. So they're saying we're going to allow you to get some experience as long as you're under the supervision of somebody who holds these certificates. The holder of a repair station certificate may perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations as provided in Part 145 of this chapter. The holder of an air carrier operating certificate or an operating certificate issued under Part 121 or 135 may perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations as provided in Part 121 or 135. Except for holders of a sport pilot certificate, the holder of a pilot certificate issued under Part 61 may perform preventative maintenance on any aircraft owned or operated by that pilot, which is not used under Part 121, 129, or 135 of this chapter. The holder of a sport pilot certificate may perform preventative maintenance on an aircraft owned or operated by that pilot and issued a special airworthiness certificate in the light sport category. So, what is this section saying? It's saying a person who holds a pilot certificate under Part 61 can perform maintenance or preventative maintenance as long as it's not under Part 121, 129, 135, as long as the aircraft is not operating under these parts. Now, a sport pilot can perform preventative maintenance on an aircraft as long as it's issued with a special airworthiness certificate in the light sport category. Notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph G of this section, the administrator may approve a certificate holder under Part 135 of this chapter operating rotorcraft in a remote area to allow a pilot to perform specific preventative maintenance items provided. So this is for people operating a rotorcraft in a remote area. So they get special rules on preventative maintenance. The items of preventative maintenance are a result of a known or suspected mechanical difficulty or malfunction that occurred en route to or in a remote area. The pilot has satisfactorily completed an approved training program and is authorized in writing by the certificate holder for each item of preventative maintenance that the pilot is authorized to perform. There is no certificated mechanic available to perform the preventative maintenance. The certificate holder has procedures to evaluate the accomplishment of a preventative maintenance item that requires a decision concerning the airworthiness of the rotorcraft, and the items of preventative maintenance authorized by this section are those listed in paragraph C of Appendix A of this part. So this is saying if you're in a remote area and something goes wrong with your aircraft and you have to perform preventative maintenance as a pilot, these things have to be done. So it's also saying if there's no certificated mechanic, you have the right to conduct that preventative maintenance. Now, where were we? We were here. Okay. Notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph G of this section, in accordance with an approval issued to the holder of a certificate issued under Part 135 of this chapter, a pilot of an aircraft type certificated for 9 or fewer passenger seats, excluding any pilot seat, may perform the removal and reinstallation of approved aircraft cabin seats, approved cabin-mounted stretchers, and when no tools are required, approved cabin-mounted medical oxygen bottles provided. The pilot has satisfactorily completed an approved training program and is authorized in writing by the certificate holder to perform each task, and the certificate holder has written procedures available to the pilot to evaluate the accomplishment of the task. A manufacturer may rebuild or alter any aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance manufactured by him under a type or production certificate, rebuild or alter any appliance or part of aircraft engines, propellers, or appliances manufactured by him under a technical standard order authorization, an FAA parts manufacturer approval, or product and process specification issued by the administrator, and perform any inspection required by Part 91 or Part 125 of this chapter on aircraft it manufactured under a type certificate or currently manufactures under a production certificate. Updates of databases in installed avionics meeting the conditions of this paragraph are not considered maintenance and may be performed by pilots provided. The database upload is initiated from the flight deck, performed without disassembling the avionics unit, and performed without the use of tools and or special equipment. The pilot must comply with the certificate holder's procedures or the manufacturer's instructions. The holder of operating certificates must make available written procedures consistent with manufacturer's instructions to the pilot that describe how to perform the database update and determine the status of the data upload. So what I was thinking about during this section is all the FARs are pretty much organized the same way. You have a scenario in which something has to be done, and below it are going to be the requirements for that scenario. So that's just something to think about when you're reading through the FARs. 43.5, approval for return to service after maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, or alteration. No person may approve for return to service any aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance that has undergone maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, or alteration, unless the maintenance record entry required by 43.9 or 43.11 as appropriate has been made, the repair or alteration form authorized by or furnished by the administrator has been executed in a manner prescribed by the administrator, and if a repair or an alteration results in any change in the aircraft operating limitations or flight data contained in the approved aircraft flight manual, those operating limitations or flight data are appropriately revised and set forth as prescribed in 91.9 of this chapter. 43.7. Persons authorized to approve aircraft, airframes, aircraft engines, propellers, appliances, or component parts for return to service after maintenance, preventative maintenance, and rebuilding or alteration, except as provided in this section. And 43, no person other than the administrator may approve an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part for return to service after it has undergone maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, or alteration. The holder of a mechanic certificate or an inspection authorization may approve an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part for return to service as provided in Part 65 of this chapter. The holder of a repair station certificate may approve an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part for return to service as provided in Part 145 of this chapter. A manufacturer may approve for return to service any aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or part or component part which that manufacturer has worked on under 43.3J. However, except for minor alterations, the work must have been done in accordance with technical data approved by the administrator. The holder of an air carrier operating certificate or an operating certificate issued under Part 121 or 135 may approve an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part for return to service as provided in Part 121 or 135 of this chapter, as applicable. A person holding at least a private pilot certificate may approve an aircraft for return to service after performing preventive maintenance under the provisions of 43.3G. The holder of a repairman certificate, light sport aircraft with a maintenance rating, may approve an aircraft issued a special airworthiness certificate in light sport category for return to service as provided in Part 65 of this chapter. The holder of at least a sport pilot certificate may approve an aircraft owned or operated by that pilot and issued a special airworthiness certificate in the light sport category for return to service after performing preventative maintenance under the provisions of 43.3G. So just to recap, these are the people that are authorized to approve an aircraft to return to service. Up next, we have 43.9, content, form, and disposition of maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, and alteration records, except inspections performed in accordance with Part 91, Part 125, 135, 411, A1, and 135, 419 of this chapter. Maintenance record entries, except as provided in paragraphs B and C of this section. Each person who maintains, performs preventive maintenance, rebuilds, or alters an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part shall make an entry in the maintenance record of that equipment containing the following information. So you have to maintain records and enter maintenance records into logbooks for these things, and this is what has to be put in that record. A description or reference to data acceptable to the administrator of work performed, the date of completion of the work performed, the name of the person performing the work, if other than the person specified in paragraph A4 of this section, if the work performed on the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part has been performed satisfactorily, the signature, certificate number, and kind of certificate held by the person approving the work. The signature constitutes the approval for return to service only for the work performed. Each holder of an air carrier operating certificate or an operating certificate issued under Part 121 or 135 that is required by its approved operations specifications to provide for a continuous airworthiness maintenance program shall make a record of the maintenance, preventive maintenance, rebuilding, and alteration on aircraft, airframes, aircraft engines, propellers, appliances, or component parts which it operates in accordance with the applicable provisions of Part 121 or 135 of this chapter as appropriate. This section does not apply to persons performing inspections in accordance with Part 91, 125, 135, 411, A1, or 135, 419 of this chapter. In addition to the entry required by paragraph A of this section, major repairs and major alterations shall be entered on a form and the form disposed of in the manner prescribed in Appendix B by the person performing the work. Alright, moving on here. I was trying to think if there was anything I needed to add to that, but I think it covers it. 43.10, disposition of life-limited aircraft parts. So now they're going to give some definitions here. A life-limited part means any part for which a mandatory replacement limit is specified on the type design, the instructions for continued airworthiness, or the maintenance manual. Life status means the accumulated cycles, hours, or any other mandatory replacement limit of a life-limited part. Temporary removal of parts from type certificated products. When a life-limited part is temporarily removed and reinstalled for the purpose of performing maintenance, no disposition under paragraph C of this section is required if the life status of the part has not changed, the removal and reinstallation is performed on the same serial numbered product, and the product does not accumulate time in service while the part is removed. Disposition of parts removed from type certificated products. Except as provided in paragraph B of this section, April 15, 2002, each person who removes a life-limited part from a type certificated product must ensure that the part is controlled using one of the methods in this paragraph. The method must deter the installation of the part after it has reached its life limit. Acceptable methods include record keeping system. The part may be controlled using a record keeping system that substantiates the part number, serial number, and current life status of the part. Each time the part is removed from a type certificated product, the record must be updated with the current life status. This system may include electronic, paper, or other means of record keeping. Tag or record attached to part. A tag or other record may be attached to the part. The tag or record must include the part number, serial number, and current life status of the part. Each time the part is removed from a type certificated product, either a new tag or record must be created, or the existing tag or record must be updated with the current life status. Non-permanent marking. The part may be legibly marked using a non-permanent method showing its current life status. The life status must be updated each time the part is removed from a type certificated product, or if the mark is removed, another method in this section may be used. The mark must be accomplished in accordance with the instructions under 45:16 of this chapter in order to maintain the integrity of the part. Permanent marking. The part may be legibly marked using a permanent method showing its current life status. The life status must be updated each time the part is removed from a type certificated product, unless the part is permanently removed from use on type certificated products. This permanent mark must be accomplished in accordance with the instructions under 45:16 of this chapter in order to maintain the integrity of the part. Segregation. The part may be segregated using methods that deter its installation on a type certificated product. These methods must include, at least, maintaining a record of the part number, serial number, and current life status, and ensuring the part is physically stored separately from parts that are currently eligible for installation. Mutilation. The part may be mutilated to deter its installation in a type certificated product. The mutilation must render the part beyond repair and incapable of being reworked to appear to be airworthy. Other methods. Any other method approved or accepted by the FAA. Transfer of life-limited parts. Each person who removes a life-limited part from a type certificated product and later sells or otherwise transfers that part must transfer with the part, the mark, tag, or other record used to comply with this section unless the part is mutilated before it is sold or transferred. 4311. Content, form, and disposition of records for inspections conducted under Parts 91 and 125 and 135-411A1 and 135-419 of this chapter. Now, if you remember in 43.9, 43.9 was the exception to inspections conducted under 91, 125, 135, 411, and 135, 419. So now we're just talking about those parts. Maintenance record entries. The person approving or disapproving for return to service an aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part after any inspection performed in accordance with Part 91, 125, 135-411A1, or 135-419 shall make an entry in the maintenance record of that equipment containing the following information. So this is the information that is required: the type of inspection and a brief description of the extent of the inspection, the date of the inspection and aircraft total time in service, the signature, the certificate number, and kind of certificate held by the person approving or disapproving for return to service the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, component part, or portions thereof. Except for progressive inspections, if the aircraft is found to be airworthy and approved for return to service, the following or a similarly wow, can't believe that just happened. Worded statement: I certify this aircraft has been inspected in accordance with insert type inspection and was determined to be in airworthy condition. Except for progressive inspections, if the aircraft is not approved for return to service because of needed maintenance, non-compliance with the applicable specifications, airworthiness directives, or other approved data, the following or a similarly worded statement: I certify that this aircraft has been inspected in accordance with insert type inspection, and a list of discrepancies and unairworthy items dated has been provided for the aircraft owner or operator. For progressive inspections, the following or a similarly worded statement, I certify that in accordance with a progressive inspection program, a routine inspection of identified weather aircraft or components, and a detailed inspection of identified components were performed and the aircraft or components are approved or disapproved for return to service. If disapproved, the entry will further state, and a list of discrepancies and unairworthy items dated has been provided to the aircraft owner or operator. If an inspection is conducted under an inspection program provided for in Part 91, 125, or 135, 411, A1, the entry must identify the inspection program, that part of the inspection program accomplished, and contain a statement that the inspection was performed in accordance with the inspections and procedures for that particular program. Listing of discrepancies and placards. If the person performing any inspection required by Part 91 or 125 of or 135 411 A1 of this chapter finds that the aircraft is unairworthy or does not meet the applicable type certificate data, airworthiness directives, or other approved data upon which its airworthiness depends, that person must give the owner or lessee a signed and dated list of those discrepancies. For those items permitted to be inoperative under 91-213 D2 of this chapter, that person shall place a placard that meets the aircraft's airworthiness certification regulations on each inoperative instrument and the cockpit control of each item of inoperative equipment making it inoperative, and shall add the items to the signed and dated list of discrepancies given to the owner or lessee. So this is saying, next is 4312, maintenance records, falsification, reproduction, or alteration. No person may make or cause to be made any fraudulent or intentionally false entry in any record or report that is required to be made, kept, or used to show compliance with any requirement under this part. Any reproduction for fraudulent purpose of any record or report under this part, or any alteration for fraudulent purpose, or any record or report under this part. The commission by any person of an act prohibited under paragraph A of this section is a basis for suspending or revoking the applicable airman, operator, or production certificate, technical standard order authorization, FAA parts manufacturer approval, or product and process specifications issued by the administrator and held by that person. So a quick story time. I had a student that was a CFII, MEI, had quite a bit. I don't know the exact number of how many flight hours he had, but he had quite a bit of flight time. I think over 1,000. But he did falsify some maintenance records, and the FAA found out and revoked all of his certificates. And it took 6 years after that for him to start training again and trying to get his private pilot's license, and I helped him with that. So, and we really went into depth on maintenance, obviously. So that's just a story time there. 4313, performance rules, general. Each person performing maintenance, alteration, or preventive maintenance on an aircraft, engine, propeller, or appliance shall use the methods, techniques, and practices prescribed in the current manufacturer's maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness prepared by its manufacturer, or other methods, techniques, and practices acceptable to the administrator except as noted in 4316. He shall use the tools, equipment, and test apparatuses necessary to assure completion of the work in accordance with accepted industry practices. If special equipment or test apparatus is recommended by the manufacturer involved, he must use that equipment or apparatus or its equivalent acceptable to the administrator. Each person maintaining or altering or performing preventive maintenance shall do that work in such a manner and use materials of such a quality that the condition of the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance worked on will be at least equal to its original or properly altered condition. With regard to aerodynamic function, structural strength, resistance to vibration and deterioration, and other qualities affecting airworthiness. Special provisions for holders of air carrier operating certificates and operating certificates issued under the provisions of Part 121 or 135 and Part 129. Operators holding operation specifications. Unless otherwise notified by the administrator, the methods, techniques, and practices contained in the maintenance manual or the maintenance part of the manual of the part of an air carrier operating certificate or an operating certificate under Part 121 or 135 and Part 129, operators holding operation specifications that is required by its original specifications to provide a continuous airworthiness maintenance and inspection program, constitute acceptable means of compliance with this section. Moving on, we have 43.15, additional performance rules for inspection. Each person performing an inspection required by Part 91, 125, or 135 of this chapter shall perform the inspection so that to determine whether the aircraft or portions thereof under inspection meet all applicable airworthiness requirements, and if the inspection is one provided for in Part 125, 135, 91.409 of this chapter, perform the inspection in accordance with the instructions and procedures set forth in the inspection program for the aircraft being inspected. Rotorcraft. Each person performing an inspection required by Part 91 on a rotorcraft shall inspect the following systems in accordance with the maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness of the manufacturer concerned. The drive shafts or similar systems, the main rotor transmission gear box for obvious defects, the main rotor and center section or the equivalent area, the auxiliary rotor on helicopters. Annual and 100-hour inspection. So these are rules pertaining to the annual and 100-hour inspection. Each person performing an annual or 100-hour inspection shall use a checklist while performing the inspection. The checklist may be of the person's own design, one provided by the manufacturer of the equipment being inspected, or one obtained from another source. This checklist must include the scope and detail of the items contained in Appendix D to this part and Paragraph B of this section. Each person approving a reciprocating engine-powered aircraft for return to service after an annual or 100-hour inspection shall, before that approval, run the aircraft engine or engines to determine satisfactory performance in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations of power output, magnetos, fuel and oil pressure, and cylinder and oil temperature. Each person approving a turbine engine-powered aircraft for return to service after an annual, 100-hour, or progressive inspection shall, before that approval, run the aircraft engine or engines to determine satisfactory performance in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Progressive inspection. Each person performing a progressive inspection shall, at the start of a progressive inspection system, inspect the aircraft completely. After this initial inspection, routine and detailed inspections must be conducted as prescribed in the progressive inspection schedule. Routine inspections consist of visual examination or check of the appliances, the aircraft and its components and systems insofar as practicable, Without disassembly, detailed inspections consist of a thorough examination of the appliances, the aircraft and its components and systems, with such disassembly as is necessary for the purposes of this subparagraph. The overhaul of a component or system is considered to be a detailed inspection. If the aircraft is away from the station where inspections are normally conducted, an appropriately rated mechanic, a certificated repair station, or the manufacturer of the aircraft may perform inspections in accordance with the procedures and using the forms of the person who would otherwise perform the inspection. 4316. Airworthiness limitations. Each person performing an inspection or other maintenance specified in an airworthiness limitation section of a manufacturer's maintenance manual or instructions for continued airworthiness shall perform the inspection or other maintenance in accordance with that section, or in accordance with operation specifications approved by the administrator under Part 121 or 135, or an inspection program approved under 91-409. Next we have 4317. Maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations performed on U.S. aeronautical products by certain Canadian persons. I always find that wording kind of funny. I only hang out with certain Canadian persons. It's just funny to me. All right, definitions. For purposes of this section, now they're going to give us some definitions. Aeronautical product means any civil aircraft or airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, component, or part to be installed thereon. Canadian aeronautical product means any aeronautical product under airworthiness regulation by Transport Canada Civil Aviation. U.S. aeronautical product means any aeronautical product under the airworthiness regulation by the FAA. Applicability. So what does this apply to? This section does not apply to any U.S. aeronautical products maintained or altered under the bilateral agreement made between Canada and any country other than the United States. A person holding a valid Transport Canada Civil Aviation Maintenance Engineer license and appropriate ratings may, with respect to a U.S. registered aircraft located in Canada, perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations in accordance with the requirements of paragraph D of this section, and approve the affected aircraft for return to service in accordance with the requirements of paragraph E of this section. So in this section here, the AME in Canada is pretty much equivalent to a AMP in the United States. So they're saying if you're in Canada and you hold a AME, Aviation Maintenance Engineer license, then you can perform maintenance on an aircraft registered in the United States, and you can perform maintenance. Yeah. So that's the explanation for that. A Transport Canada Civil Aviation approved maintenance organization holding appropriate ratings may, with respect to U.S. registered aircraft or other U.S. aeronautical products located in Canada, perform maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations in accordance with the requirements of paragraph D of this section, and approve the affected products for return to service in accordance with the requirements of paragraph E of this section. Performance requirements. A person authorized in paragraph C of this section may perform maintenance, including any inspection required by section 91-409 of this chapter, except an annual inspection, preventive maintenance and alterations provided. The person performing the work is authorized by Transport Canada Civil Aviation to perform the same type of work with respect to Canadian aeronautical products. The maintenance, preventive maintenance, or alteration is performed in accordance with a bilateral aviation safety agreement between the United States and Canada and associated maintenance implementation procedures that provide a level of safety equivalent to that provided by the provisions of this chapter. The maintenance, preventative maintenance, or alteration is performed such that the affected product complies with the applicable requirements of Part 36 of this chapter, and the maintenance, preventive maintenance, or alteration is recorded in accordance with a bilateral aviation safety agreement between the United States and Canada and associated maintenance implementation procedures that provide a level of safety equivalent to that provided by the provisions of this chapter. Approval requirements. To return an affected product to service, a person authorized in paragraph C of this section must approve or certify maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alterations performed under this section, except that an aircraft maintenance engineer may not approve a major repair or major alteration. An AMO whose system of quality control of the maintenance, preventive maintenance, alteration, and inspection of aeronautical products has been approved by Transport Canada Civil Aviation, or an authorized employee performing work for such an AMO may approve or certify a major repair or major alteration performed under this section if the work was performed in accordance with technical data approved by the FAA. No person may operate in air commerce an aircraft airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance on which maintenance, preventive maintenance, or alteration has been performed under this section, unless it has been approved for return to service by a person authorized in this section. Now we have Appendix A to Part 43, Major Alterations, Major Repairs, and Preventative Maintenance. Major alterations. Airframe major alterations. Alterations of the following parts and alterations of the following types when not listed in the aircraft specifications issued by the FAA are airframe major alterations. So these are considered major airframe alterations. So any alteration on the wings, hull or floats, rotor blades, stuff like that. I won't go into depth and read all that because this video is running long. Power plant major alterations. The following alterations of a power plant when not listed in the engine specifications issued by the FAA are power plant major alterations. So these are what are considered power plant major alterations. Propeller major alterations. The following alterations of a propeller when not authorized in the propeller specifications issued by the FAA are propeller major alterations. These are propeller major alterations. Appliance major alterations. Alterations of the basic design not made in accordance with recommendations of the appliance manufacturer or in accordance with an FAA airworthiness directive are appliance major alterations. In addition, changes in the basic design of radio communication and navigation equipment approved under type certification or a technical standard order that have an effect on frequency, stability, noise level, sensitivity, selectivity, distortion, spurious radiation, AVC characteristics, or ability to meet environmental test conditions and other changes that have an effect on the performance of the equipment are also major alterations. Major repairs. These things are what is considered major repairs. So airframe major repairs. Repairs to the following parts of an airframe and repairs of the following types involving the strengthening, reinforcing, splicing, and manufacturing of primary structural members or their replacement when replacement is by fabrication, such as riveting or welding, are airframe major repairs. These things are airframe major repairs. Power plant major repairs. Repairs of the following parts of an engine and repairs of the following types are power plant major repairs. These are power plant major repairs. Propeller major repairs. Repairs of the following types to a propeller are propeller major repairs. These are propeller major repairs. Appliance major repairs. Repairs of the following types to appliances are appliance major repairs. Once again, these are appliance major repairs. Preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance is limited to the following work provided it does not involve complex assembly operations. And these are examples of preventative maintenance, such as servicing landing gear wheel bearings, such as cleaning and greasing. And you'll notice that these procedures aren't really that technical. They're very simple, like replacing safety belts, replacing prefabricated fuel lines, replacing and servicing batteries, just basic stuff that doesn't require complex assembly. All right, let's see what we do need to read here. That's still preventative maintenance here. Still preventative maintenance. All right, Appendix B to 43, recording of major repairs and major alterations. Except as provided in paragraphs B, C, and D of this appendix, each person performing a major repair or major alteration shall execute FAA Form 337 at least in duplicate, give a signed copy of that form to the aircraft owner, and forward a copy of that form to the FAA Aircraft Registration Branch in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, within 48 hours after the aircraft airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance is approved for return to service. For major repairs made in accordance with a manual or specifications acceptable to the administrator, a certificated repair station may, in place of the requirements of paragraph A, use the customer's work order upon which the repair is recorded, give the aircraft owner a signed copy of the work order, and retain a duplicate copy for at least 2 years from the date of approval for return to service of the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance. Give the aircraft owner a maintenance release signed by an authorized representative of the repair station and incorporating the following information: identity of the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance. If an aircraft, the make, model, serial number, nationality, and registration marks, and location of the repaired area. If an airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance, give the manufacturer's name, name of the part, model, and serial numbers, if any, and include the following or a similarly worded statement: the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, or appliance identified above was repaired and inspected in accordance with current regulations of the Federal Aviation Agency and is approved for return to service. Pertinent details of the repair are on file at this repair station under number, whatever the number is. And here's an example of that. Except as provided in paragraph D of this appendix, for major repair or major alteration made by a person authorized in 4317, the person who performs the major repair or major alteration, and the person authorized by 4317 to approve that work shall execute an FAA Form 337 at least in duplicate. A completed copy of that form shall be given to the aircraft owner and forwarded to the Federal Aviation Administration Aircraft Registration Branch, Post Office Box 25504, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73125, within 48 hours after the work is inspected. For extended range fuel tanks installed within the passenger compartment or a baggage compartment, the person who performs the work and the person authorized to approve the work by 437 shall execute an FAA Form 337 in at least triplicate. A completed copy of that form shall be placed on board the aircraft as specified in 91.417 of this chapter, given to the aircraft owner, and forwarded to the Federal Aviation Administration Aircraft Registration Branch, Post Office Box 25724, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73125, within 48 hours after the work is inspected. Next, we have Appendix D to Part 43, Scope and Detail of Items as applicable to the particular aircraft, to be included in annual and 100-hour inspections. So I won't go in depth into this, but If you ever wondered what happens and what they're looking for during an annual and 100-hour inspections, this is what they're looking for. For example, seats and safety belts for poor condition and apparent defects. For the landing gear group, shock absorbing devices for improper oleo fluid level. Just stuff like that. They're looking at everything. So next we have Appendix E to Part 43, Altimeter System Tests and Inspection. Each person performing the altimeter system tests and inspections required by 91.411 of this chapter must comply with the following. So now they're talking about the altimeter system test and inspection and what goes into that. I'll skip over this as well. Let's see. Got some tables for the altimeter. More tables. More tables. So that's everything that goes into the altimeter inspections. Appendix F to Part 43. ATC transponder tests and inspections. Same thing here, except this is for transponder tests. All of this here, we're just skipping over this because this video is almost an hour long. And that's going to do it for this video on Part 43. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. See ya!